Welcome in to the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, coming to you a little bit later than we normally would, but glad to have you with us listening or watching. If you're watching over on YouTube, hi YouTube. Hope you all are doing well and having a fantastic day. Again, it's great to have you here. And Joey, what's going on, man? How are you doing today?
Well, first of all, the reason we're recording a little later is I had a little family issue going on last night. My daughter she got some new teeth coming in, so she was not comfortable at all during bedtime. So had to comfort her. Had to go to Walgreens at midnight to go get some Orajel, and this is the usual dad stuff that happens. But now I'm glad yeah, she seems to be okay today. Fingers crossed, and we're able to record today. Thanks for making some time for a little bit more Hoth Hangout.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a painful experience. Those teeth coming in.
Oh
Just
yeah,
like, ugh. That's one of those things that I think just like I think we often overlook just as humans like stuff like that at how painful that can be. So
yeah. I mean, think about like you have teeth like cutting through your
yeah,
gums.
that's
I
what I
mean,
mean.
she was bleeding a good amount too, and I'm like, oh wow, this is I mean that it's been a very long time since we've had that happen to us. So
Yeah.
to see it from her eyes, I'm like, oh yeah, she's not happy right now. So we had to handle it. She finally fell asleep at like 1 in the morning, and I'm like, it might be a little too late to record, So, but yeah, we're good. We're good now.
Well, glad everything's good, and hopefully today has been better. And yeah, once again, it's good to have y'all with us for episode 23. We realize this is the Jordan episode of the
Jordan,
podcast.
that's right, Jordan.
or
Everyone,
or
listen,
LeBron. Is it the LeBron episode or the Jordan episode?
Jordan. Don't
Spoken
ever.
like someone from Chicago.
That's right. It's absolute. Well, LeBron's number 6 now, so I can't.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
So Jordan has always been 23. Let's just remember
This is true. The original, the
that.
OG 23.
I mean, you got the jersey behind you. You could look at it. Literally
That
look at
that's
it right
true.
there.
I do have a I have both, to be fair. I've got a 23 Jordan and a 23 LeBron.
Okay.
But, we just were able to watch yesterday the 10th episode of the second season of Bad Batch, titled Retrieval. And before we hop into the Bad Batch newest episode breakdown and analysis, wanted to give a couple other updates in all things the world of Star Wars. First of all, something that I know you're very passionate about, and something that I'm hoping we can maybe potentially go together in 2025 is Star Wars Celebration, which this year I believe it's hosted in London. I know it's somewhere in Europe.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it's London. From April 7th to 10th, and they actually just announced the lineup of everyone that's going to be there. And Joey, when you sent this to me, I looked at it and I was like, the list, it just keeps going and going. I was like, how many people are going to be there? It's
They scroll.
crazy.
You keep scrolling. It's great.
I mean, I'm looking at this list. I mean, and it's cool too because it's not just like, bring the OG trilogy people in, or it's like all eras of Star Wars. Like Anthony Daniels is there, right? Like you can't get more classic than that. But then they also have people like what's her name? Vivian Lyra Blair, who plays young Leia in the new Obi-Wan show. So, it's just like people from all across the board. I think I'm just roughly counting almost 25, 30 people on this list you sent me. Anyone
Hmm.
stick out that looks like a favorite of yours who's going to be there?
Wow. I mean, I think Rosario Dawson's a pretty cool one. The newest Ahsoka, as well as the original Ahsoka, Ashley
Ashley?
Eckstein.
Yep. That's my girl.
Those are very cool. Gwendolyn Christie is
Mm.
that's a very cool one. Captain Phasma.
I feel like she's just a
Um,
cool person in general. Like if I could be
right.
buddies with anyone who's ever been in Star Wars, well, that's a tall ask, but Gwendolyn Christie, I mean, I love Game of Thrones too, which is also
Right.
partially why I say it. She's just awesome. She just strikes every interview I ever watch with her. She's like just seems fun. I want to go
Exactly.
like, go have a drink with her at a bar or something like that. She's
Right.
just a
Yeah.
cool person.
And I mean, obviously, Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen. I mean, those are huge names that would be very cool to see. I mean, like you said, it's just a ton of people. Carl Weathers, Billy D. Williams,
Hmm.
Andy Serkis. I think this is his first celebration that he's going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the lineup this time around is really really cool. The last time that when I went to Celebration 2019, a couple of these names were there, like the Billy D. Williams, Ashley Eckstein. I actually have a picture with Ashley, that I have. I'll have
Have
to
you
show
showed
it
that to me
sometime.
before?
I don't think I've shown it to you. I'll have to show it
Ooh,
to you
I'm
sometime. Yeah.
jealous.
Yeah, she's super cool. But yeah, like even like Katie Sackhoff's in there. Mads Mikkelsen's in there. Galen Erso, I think that's a really cool one.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, like you said, all eras of Star Wars represented very well. Ming Na Wen, I love her in so many things. Joy Club. Um,
Ian
what
McDermott,
was the Ian McDermott? Right, yeah, Ian
old
McDermott.
old Palpy
Obviously,
himself.
Palpy is here. I mean, just and you even have like the ones that Tim Rose, Admiral Akbar. I mean, I mean the OGs. You can't get more OG than that, right?
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a cool list. Maybe we should drop it in our show notes there, just
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people can take a look at that. But yeah, I mean and yeah, I know you haven't been to a celebration. I talk like I've been to so many. I've been to literally one, but you have the opportunity to meet all of these people that are in the shows, in the movies, and then there's panels that you can go watch. There's obviously all of collectible figures is a huge thing in Star Wars, obviously over time. So there's hundreds of vendors there. It's just a cool time. So hopefully 2025 it's stateside and somewhere that you and I can probably meet up and hang out. Maybe we have our own podcast panel together or something. So I think it would be a lot of fun either way. So hopefully we're it's somewhere in 2025 what we can go to.
Chicago, honestly, it would be a cool place to have it.
Yeah.
Although they'll probably end up having it likely in like, San Diego or somewhere
Yeah,
over there.
California, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in Chicago in 2019, so
Oh,
that's how I was even able to go. Because I'm obviously any travel is expensive. Then you throw the tickets of Star Wars Celebration, which are not cheap. On top of it, hotel stay, all that stuff. Um, but yeah, it's a good time. Hopefully, we'll have tons of sponsors by then, and we could just write it all off into our
there you go.
accountants.
It's a business expense.
Exactly. We got a couple
Um,
years. We could do it.
One more thing on the Star Wars celebration before we move on to the next thing. I did notice on Andy Serkis's profile, they listed Kino Loy as his primary role and then Snoke as his secondary role.
Interesting.
Just want to throw. I don't know if it's alphabetical. I don't know what it is, but I think they're showing some preference to Andor over the sequels. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think that's what you and I rank him as well.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, if anyone listening is gonna be at Star Wars Celebration over in London this year, tweet at us or shoot us an email, or if you're watching on YouTube, comment down below. Let us know kind of either A, if you're planning to go, and B, if you're watching this after you've gone, what your experience was like. We would genuinely be interested and really curious to know how it was.
And not jealous at all.
And not in the slightest. Yeah. We're vicariously living through that person probably.
That's right.
One other small thing I did want to touch on again before we hop into the Bad Batch material. There was a little bit of news that broke a couple days ago. I think it was over the weekend actually, where Liam Neeson was doing an interview. I can't recall who it was with, but I've got a quote from his interview, and I thought this was really interesting. For those, if you happen to not know who Liam Neeson plays in Star Wars, he's Master Qui-Gon Jinn from The Phantom Menace primarily, but also making some other, key appearances here in like Tales of the Jedi, for example. We saw him a little bit. And then, of course, in the newest Obi-Wan show, we saw him towards the tail end for about 30 seconds or so, whatever that was. And Liam Neeson's always been one of my favorite actors. I really, I think he used to be one of my favorite. I still love him. But I think a lot of his movies are just like the same thing now. It's like
what do you mean?
It's like I'm a retired government agent, and I've been tasked with coming out of retirement to go and kill somebody. And it's like and if I don't, they're gonna get my family. It's like I'm pretty sure he's made 12 movies with that same plot.
I thought I was podcasting with Ben. When did Liam Neeson enter the voice chat? Hello.
Yeah. Nothing against Liam Neeson. I do love him. And even some of his newer movies, I watched. I'm like, that's a Liam Neeson movie. I appreciate it. But the quote, which he gave in his interview recently, he was kind of talking about they were talking about Star Wars in general. Then of course the question always comes back to him. Would you ever be interested in making like a return to Star Wars other than just like this cameo here or there, sort of as like a key role if it was like a prequel to the prequels per se, something like that as like a young Qui-Gon. And his quote when asked if he'd be interested in returning, he said, "quote No, I'm not." He said, "There's so many spin-offs of Star Wars, it's diluting it to me, and it's taken away from the mystery and magic in a weird way." What do you think about that? Because I mean, there's we always say more Star Wars is great Star Wars. Like we live in an era where we're lucky enough to have like something new of Star Wars 3, 4, maybe even more times a year. Um, and so to hear something like that, it almost contrasts sort of what we've spoken about before, and that we're lucky to have more Star Wars because he's like, hey, maybe we should pump the brakes and slow it down. He says it's being diluted. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of that comes from the artist side of him of as an actor, that you don't want too much of a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where he's coming from. Where you and I are like, well, it's all good. So what's the difference anyway, right? At least we have something to watch, talk about every week, and um, uh, the release of some of these things, I would like to maybe spread across a little bit. I don't think he's even talking to that much to that point. Like for instance, we're gonna run into Mandalorian next week while
Mm-hmm.
Bad Batch is out. I would have rather finished Bad Batch for the next couple months, give us a little break, and then give us Mandalorian for the next 2 months.
Yeah.
Then a little break, then give us Ahsoka, then a little break. I would rather it be that way. Sure, I don't think that's what he was talking about. I think he's just the mass production of all of these stories now. I think that is just too much. He That's what he's thinking about from his stand. And I think like I said, from an artist standpoint, I can kind of see where he's coming from. That it's diluting it for sure. But
Mm.
I don't think he's thinking of from a fan's perspective. I honestly don't know anything about his loyalties to Star Wars, how much he's interested. I'm not saying that I'm a better fan than him or anything like that, but I think from a fan's perspective, if you have the means of being able to watch the Disney Plus shows, if you have the means to read some comic books and um, the books, and watch the movies, of course, which by the way we haven't had a movie since 2019, so that's interesting too. So I think, and it also speaks to where entertainment is going towards now.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, streaming is king right now, right? You've got all these streaming platforms. You've got got Apple TV, you've got Disney Plus, you've got Hulu, you've got everything. Not sponsored, by the way. You have all these streaming avenues that you can go to. Now that just gives the accessibility to that art to a lot of people now, and I think that's a good thing. He may be thinking a little bit more old school.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I gather from it. Nothing wrong with it. He got to where he was by doing movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of all it was. You could never find a movie star in TV shows back in the day. What I mean? That's
Right.
that's not what they did.
Or even like 10 or 15 years ago, it really wasn't that common.
Right. Well, right. So, but now you've got, these huge stars on Apple TV Plus,
Mm-hmm.
like doing these shows, you see it on Netflix. You see, you're seeing like the Jennifer Aniston's, the Adam Sandlers. You see them, showing. And I don't know if that ages me. I think, but I think I still consider them, pretty important stars in the industry. They are making shows on. They're making movies on the streaming platforms or TV shows or whatever. So I think he is kind of caught in that era where that's not how we did it. We didn't just mass produce all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and it'd be one thing if all of the shows were exactly pointing at the same thing. They're not. Star Wars Bad Batch is nothing like Mandalorian, is nothing like uh Obi-Wan, is so I mean, yes, there are the overlaying themes that are the same, but those stories are completely different. So I think from a fan standpoint, from where we are, I think we're enjoying it because who knew that I wanted more about Count Dooku. I didn't know that, until you gave it to me, and now I want more of it. So, I personally think, he's just coming from a certain point of view, and that's fine. That's totally fine. Everyone's but I cannot wait until he himself is at Star Wars Celebration in 2025, probably, or 2027, when he decided to come back to get some autographs, or if he's not working anymore, and that's where he'll end up too. So I mean, I, I as much as I appreciate the opinion, I don't agree with it.
Two things. One, it took everything in my power not to answer with your certain point of view. A certain point of view? Second thing.
I said it knowing that was possible.
Yeah. Second thing was, in regards to what you said about the TV and the movies, I think there's probably a little bit of truth to the fact that Liam Neeson does kind of strike me as someone who's, a little bit more old school with the way he does things. And so, he sees all these TV shows about Star Wars coming out. And I think he enjoyed his experience of being a part of Star Wars, but he doesn't strike me as someone who was like, out here watching every episode of the Clone Wars. You know what I mean? Or really anything probably outside the movies. And so he probably sees all these other TV shows and he's like, well, that's all that extra stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. That was more Sean Connery than Liam Neeson.
I was about to say that.
But you get my point.
I remember Sean Connery in Star Wars, but yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting to note. But at least if we believe his statement, which I am inclined to, it doesn't seem like he'll be a part of much Star Wars stuff moving forward, unless he's just trying to really throw us off and they make him a big part of his second season of Obi-Wan. We'll see. We will see. Well, I guess we should go ahead and hop into the Bad Batch stuff after that first portion there. This again was episode 10 of season 2, titled Retrieval. And it was not written by who was our person we liked the episode that they wrote?
Ruiz? Was Ruiz the last name, or Sal Ruiz or something?
Ruiz. Now I'm struggling to remember. Oh, was it a director or? Oh yeah, it was Ruiz.
It was a director.
Yeah. It was Sal Ruiz. Yeah, who still has not directed another episode of
Bring him back.
Bring him back,
please.
# bring back Saul.
Yeah.
But I liked the episode overall. Just a very brief synopsis. The Marauder, we kind of catch back up with the thief, who we learn. It was almost like I was like, oh, they're just gonna tell us who it is. It almost was like a little bit of a shock that they just showed us. Who, by the way, I think other than Obi-Wan, obviously going by the name Ben, I think this is the only other person in the Star Wars universe who goes by my namesake. So shout out to Benny, as we learned what his name was.
I'm gonna call you Benny from now on. Sound good?
Let's stick with it. Yeah. I'm Benny from now on. Yeah. But Benny, we learn, is stealing the ship because his, I don't know if it's fair to call. He's working slave wages basically for this guy named Mako. And so he brings us back to kind of like earn some credibility. He wants to be the top earner. Ends up later on, we learn, not being the top earner. And then meanwhile, Omega's like kind of figuring out how to find the ship because she's tracking it through, what's his name? Gonky, the Gonk droid?
Gonky, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what a clever name for your Gonk droid.
Yeah, nicely
Gonky.
done.
Yeah.
That was definitely named by Wrecker. If it wasn't by anyone else, it was Wrecker.
Yeah. And so they trace the Marauder back via Gonky to this mining base where they're mining Ipsium. And Benny is kind of caught off guard when they get there, to the point where he's like helping them because he has to, but not really wants to. And then by the end of the episode, he kind of realizes that, they're the good guys and Mako is the bad guy. But in the meantime, part of that process of figuring that out is that Benny, along with all the other workers, kind of figure out that Mako has been sort of stealing the majority of the funds for himself. And then what's the other guy's name? Drake, I think, was the other.
Shout out to Drake, apparently, the rapper.
Yeah. He was the one who was the top earner when Benny was. But even Drake is eventually, he turns on Mako as well. And things don't end well for Mako. He takes this was, what I wrote down? I wrote, this is the second Lion King reference that we've had in this season of Bad Batch. because
Episode back to back there too.
yeah, because when he's falling like into that pit of fire, I just pictured Scar, like as he's like falling, into the height with the hyenas down there.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
I mean,
Mako, it was exploiting the workers basically, and so everyone turns against him, and he falls to his death. But eventually, the Bad Batch does recover the ship, and that is where the episode leaves off.
yeah, I think people in Star Wars need to just avoid bridges altogether because they are never safe.
True.
Whoever built these narrow bridges, they know what's going to happen apparently, because I can think of Han Solo falling
Mm-hmm.
after Ben Ben
Yep.
took care of him. Now we got Mako. I'm sure there's other ones, but yeah, just avoid bridges in Star Wars,
I think
people.
I think George Lucas had a thing about bridges. You know what is it? Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, which George Lucas
Oh
also was
yes, that's
involved
true.
with.
Yeah,
There's that really fun scene with Indiana Jones on the bridge. Harrison
and
Ford has done a lot of bridge stuff for
yeah,
George Lucas.
that's true. And can I say, because of the Temple of Doom, I hate bridges because of it. Because I'm like, I hate crossing them because I think that something like that's gonna happen.
That's
Like
fair.
one of the planks falls through. Oh, I can't even get over it. It's been what, 30 years or whatever it is that that movie's been out, and I'm still
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah, that movie. Not to go off too much from Star Wars, but that movie was, I think, particularly scarier than the other two Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah, wasn't that the one he took his heart out?
Yeah, and
Was
the
that
funny
one?
thing was that I think all three of the Indiana Jones films were made before the PG-13 rating was even a thing. And so all
Oh,
three of those movies are PG, and so you've got like 8-year-olds going in there seeing someone's heart being taken out, and they're like traumatized for life.
yeah.
Anyways, Temple of Doom, pretty scary film if you've never seen it.
Right.
But overall, I enjoyed this episode. I think I liked it more than the previous episode, actually, just because it
Hmm.
felt it wasn't. They were doing something that wasn't a mission that Sid gave them.
Hmm.
Even though this was kind of a continuation of the last mission, they were going to this planet, which, by the way, I still don't, or going to the different location on the same planet, which, by the way, I still don't
I
know
don't
if
know if
we
we have the
know the
planet
name of the
name.
planet. Yeah. Um, but they're doing it in response to what happened in the previous episode, rather than us just like coming upon them on a new mission. They're like, oh, we got to get the Ipsium for Sid so that we don't know why Sid needs the Ipsium, but blah 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 blah
Right.
blah. This one
Exactly.
felt more directed. I liked the characters, the new characters we got, particularly Benny. I thought he was a fun addition to the show. Not sure if we'll ever see him again at any point necessarily, but perhaps in future, if not Bad Batch, maybe even other future Star Wars content. We'll see. Um, but yeah, I didn't have like too many thoughts regarding the episode. Honestly, I enjoyed it. I felt like it was kind of a good classic story of uh, kind of the realization of someone who is being taken advantage of by someone with the power, who this outside force comes in, that being the Bad Batch in this case, and kind of is able to make that person and the other people who were under that power as well kind of realize that what's being done here is wrong and you're being taken advantage of. So, yeah, a good episode. I liked it in general. Did you have a similar feeling, or what did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, the it gave me Clone Wars episode feelings.
Yeah.
Where the main crew, the main, people of the story, the main characters of the story are off to do something, but they run across something else that needs to be fixed, or something,
Yeah.
a wrong that needs to be righted. So I thought that was pretty cool. Just gave me those feels. I enjoyed that. The character Benny, kind of reminds me. I know you haven't watched Resistance, but it kind of reminds me of
I
Kaz
know who you're
from
talking
that.
about though. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of gives me a little bit. Kaz was a little bit more fumbly, more, kind of goofier, way of living.
Mm.
The way they characterized him, but they kind of gave me a little bit of the similar feels. Benny's more of the, okay, this is kind of a real, kind of a real person that going through these issues. Kaz was kind of like literally like the cartoon version of him in a certain way. But um, and it's funny with Benny. Obviously, we know, being the people watching, you're like, no, Benny, you're being scammed. This is wrong, the way you're being treated. but you could tell the way that he was so deprived of so many things. I mean, we're talking about, just like even like basic things like water, you could tell were a huge thing for him.
Hmm.
And when Drake was given the top earner, the rest of the crew was given one bowl of soup or whatever it was, and to see what was his name, Mako, was that was his name?
Hmm.
Back in his office, just downing, bread and meats and drinks and stuff like that, just kind of gorging himself. I mean, it was very symbolic of, and they kind of make mention of it um, at the end there, that this is like this planet's version of the Empire.
Hmm.
That you've got, this this government, this group of people that are just taking advantage of all the smaller people, and making it seem like that they're there to help them. I mean, you could tell the the relationship that Benny and Mako had. It seemed like Benny really wanted to make Mako happy. That was like one of his only reasons to live. It seems like, oh, I got to make him happy. I got to make him
Yeah.
happy because he thinks that Mako's doing so much for him, when in reality Mako can be doing so much more. And that was like, when Mako takes the plunge into the lava or whatever it was, then you could see, both Drake and Benny, come up and like, all right, well, we're gonna stay here. I think, even Omega's like, you don't have to stay here. You can do whatever you want. It's like, well, this is all I know, and I want, it's just gonna be us now, and to know that that's going to be spread out with all of those workers is kind of was a nice thing to see.
Hmm.
But one of my favorite lines in the episode was there at the end with Tech, when they were talking about how that planet, Mako and his organization there is much like the Empire and its citizens. Um, Omega basically says, like, oh, there's so many people out there like this. But then Tech says, yeah, but there's more like us, and I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff I like to hear. So I thought that was very cool, and very awesome way to end the episode
Hmm.
with a line like that, because that's kind of why we watch Star Wars. We watch Star Wars for those heroes that may not think they're heroes. They just think something is wrong, so we need to make it right. And that's what the Bad Batch is here, and kind of got me hyped, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a really epic ending to the episode. Just like, yeah, there's more of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and considering, as I'm not saying that this was an insignificant episode or anything like that, but like like you said, going into it, we were just like, well, this is just the second part of the the last episode,
Right.
to see where it ended up with, we saw who the thief was. I mean, think about all we learned in this episode. We learned that, who the thief was, that they're part of this mining guild, essentially, that is just being overrun and well, completely overworked, and being taken advantage of. And you make the comparisons to the Empire. They're able to essentially get rid of that. Obviously, very symbolic of what's to come with the Empire. So I mean, I think it was a really good episode, and I actually did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. Same. Um, one thing before I give my rating on the well, two things before I give my rating on the episode. One was the whole time I was watching, the one thing I was also thinking about was I was trying to figure out what species Mako was, and I just looked and I couldn't find it on the official wiki. But while I was watching, Zeb from Rebels.
Yeah, yeah,
I thought he looked. I think it's a Lasat is his
yeah. I think
species.
that's right. Yeah.
Although I couldn't tell if Mako was a different species or if he was a Lasat that had just eaten like a lot of food so that you couldn't tell if he was or not.
Right. Yeah, because Zeb was like jacked, wasn't he? I mean, he
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
real muscular. Yeah. So maybe this was
yeah,
Lasat that kind of let himself go a little bit. That's what you're thinking.
yeah,
And I wonder what the deal is with the arm, because he had like a robotic arm.
yeah.
So
That was kind of
he-
they didn't really delve into
yeah,
that. They didn't really explain it at
I'm
all.
waiting. I'm
But
waiting for that comic book to come out. Like, what happened to his
yeah,
arm? Because Star Wars likes chopping off arms. So I mean, that's
they do. This we know. Um, the other thing I was gonna mention was oh shoot, I already lost the second thing. Anyways, I might think of it later. But overall, again, I enjoyed the episode. I would probably. Oh, I know what it was. I just remembered. This marks the 7th episode in a row. Not to beat a dead horse, but 7th episode in a row with no Crosshair. So I'm keeping tally. I've already talked about that enough in previous episodes. So I'll just say this is the 7th without him, and I'll leave it at that.
And I think we knew going in at the end of last episode
Right.
that that's what we were going to see
Yeah.
here. Um, so as much as you could lump these last 2 episodes just kind of a 2 episode arc
Yeah.
type thing. So, hopefully next week.
I'm not holding my breath, but next week
Right, yeah.
sounds as good a time as any. I mean, it'd be cool. I mean, that's the other thing. So next week, with March 1st is the next episode, which is also the premiere of season 3 of The Mandalorian. So, by the way, side note, we should have multiple, at least one reaction out next week to the new premiere of The Mandalorian season 3, as well as our normal podcast, I think. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen, there'll be a video reaction over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube to the brand new season 3 of The Mandalorian if you're interested in checking that out. But the reason I bring that up also is because those two things come out on the same day, it makes me wonder whether they will give us like an awesome episode of The Bad Batch on the same day as Mando, or whether they'll use, or whether they've planned it purposely because it's like a down episode. That way it's like, well,
Right.
at least we also have Mando.
Right, exactly. I don't know if they would put that much planning into that. I mean, I could be wrong, but
Maybe.
I mean,
But they definitely, I mean, they
I don't
definitely
think
thought
they,
about it.
I don't think they. Right, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a thought about it, but I don't think you create the episodes through the Bad Batch knowing, all right, well, at some point we're gonna kind of have a down week because we're gonna release at, the same time as Mandalorian. I don't know like how they schedule these things, but I don't think that they're like, all right, well, let's make a subpar episode now. You know what I mean? Like let's
Sure, yeah.
purposely do that now. So I think they generally try to put their best work, the entire season long. But they may have, but there may be something to, they may have looked at their entire season and said, okay, well, this was kind of a lower excitement type of episode. Let's do this at the same time as Mandalorian since we know it's coming out.
Yeah, and last thing on next week's episode, the title, Metamorphosis. So that does give me a little bit of hope that we might get Crosshair.
Okay.
Metamorphosis obviously meaning like big change. So hopefully we'll get to see the other side of the change.
As long as it's not called the heist or.
Well, bad news. The episode titled the week after that is called The Outpost. So. But hey, maybe next week will be a Crosshair episode finally.
Yes.
All right, scores for the episode. I will probably go, I'd say solid B. I don't know if that's too generous, but I didn't I actually, okay, so I don't remember what I gave last week. I would probably say if I had to grade it now, I would probably say B minus from episode 9 and B for episode 10. I enjoyed this week's more than last week's, for a couple of the reasons we've already talked about. But I would say a solid B. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a solid B also. Like I said, it gave the Clone Wars feels. It gave us some great lines there towards the end. And yeah, and it felt like Star Wars again. Just the Clone Wars era type of episode where you have something, you have a mission that you were trying to do, but then you run along something along the way that you have to fix on the way there. So I think I enjoyed it as much as you did. I think, and it was fun. I liked it.
Yeah, those themes of kind of like going somewhere and freeing someone who's oppressed. It was very Clone Wars esque, like you said. Wait, so you said B as well then?
Yes.
Okay. Double two B's from us. Hopefully next week we continue.
B for Benny. That's
yeah. Hopefully next week we continue an upward trend. And maybe get Crosshair. We'll see. And in other Star Wars news in the coming future, we've got lots and lots and lots to break down. As I said, next week we'll be getting not only episode 11 of the second season of Bad Batch, but we will also be getting the premiere of season 3 of The Mandalorian. As I also said, we're going to be live reacting to and breaking it down here on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. That should be available at the latest early Wednesday morning next week when you wake up, if you're not staying up and watching the episode on Tuesday night. And then in other Star Wars news, of course, Jedi Survivor, which we're both excited about and potentially might cover here on the channel as well, was pushed back originally from, I think it was middle of March to April 28th. So we're about 2 months away from that now. And then May the 4th is coming up in 10 weeks or so, something like that, which we're getting Visions Season 2 and Young Jedi Adventures on that day. Going to be covering definitely Visions. I don't know if we'll cover Young Jedi Adventures, but that remains to be seen as well.
Maybe Liam was right. There's a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah. Was Liam right? Comment down below. And then there was like a small bit of announcements in regards to Ahsoka. It really wasn't that much, but essentially it was just confirming that that's going to be out sometime in the fall, which we basically already knew anyways, but still waiting on an exact date for the Ahsoka release date. Any closing thoughts or just about Bad Batch or anything Star Wars in general?
No, I think Liam's wrong. I think Liam's wrong. I think this is what Star Wars fans want. They want more content. They want to be able to turn on their TV and see familiar faces and go to the local comic book shop every week and find something new. And we haven't, when something that you and I have never even dived into is like the High Republic stuff, all the stuff that's coming out in the books and the comics. So hopefully at some point we do.
Yep.
I don't know if we ever get any live action or animated series, but there is a whole nother era that we can cover there. And I know that there's, isn't there a new Knights of the Old Republic or Knights of the Republic type of video game coming out?
I think they're remaking Knights of the Old Republic. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's I think Liam is incorrect with what he's saying. If you want to at me, Liam, you can find us at Hoth Hangout. Oh wait, that's yours. It's yours. But yeah, so I think Liam's wrong. I think this is what the fans want.
Hashtag down with Liam Neeson.
No, you see what he does when he gets mad. I mean, he has a certain set of skills, so we don't want to see that.
Skills that make him a nightmare. Should I just do the rest of this outro as Liam Neeson?
If you could, I would enjoy it.
All right. This might be really bad, but
here we go.
Thanks for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. If you don't come back and listen for more, we will find you, and we will not kill you, but it will be very upset. All right. Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.